So hello, Dr. Lenke. We are Dr. Evangelisti Gisberta from Italy.
And Franziska Altdorfer from Switzerland.
And we are members of the new AO Spine Youth Club. Welcome to the Expert Insight series, where we interview worldwide expert spine surgeons who kindly share their professional and personal experience with us. In this interview, we are privileged to showcase Dr. Lawrence Lenke, being professor of orthopedic surgery at Columbia University and surgeon-in-chief at New York Presbyterian Spine Hospital. Dr. Lenke has also been elected as the youngest president of the Scoliosis Research Society. He is a former chairman of the steering committee of the AO Spine Deformity, and among residents, most famous for his classification of deformities. So good morning, Dr. Lenke, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
You're welcome. Glad to do this.
Can you tell us your full name, specialty, and full current position?
Sure. So my name is Lawrence Gerald Lenke, and my specialty is the treatment of various spinal deformities in both children and adults. So spinal deformities, basically probably the most common one is scoliosis, or a lateral and twisting curvature of the spine, but that also includes conditions such as thoracic and lumbar kyphosis, or abnormal bending of the spine from the side. It includes spondylolisthesis, which is slippage of the vertebra, one on top of the other, most commonly at the bottom of the spinal column. And also major spinal imbalances, basically whether people are leaning kind of forward or to the side or both. Those afflictions also are kind of under the conditions of spinal deformities. And my current title is Professor and Chief of Spinal Deformity Surgery at Columbia University here in New York City. I'm also Surgeon-in-Chief of the Ox Spine Hospital, again, of the New York Presbyterian Hospital System, again, here also in New York City.
Thank you. Can you tell us where you have been trained and when did you complete your residency?
So I performed my residency at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States. I completed my residency in 1991, and I did a one-year spinal surgery fellowship with Keith Bridwell, another past president of the Scoliosis Research Society and a senior member of the society. And I thus finished my fellowship in 1992, and I stayed then on with him and joined Washington University in St. Louis to begin my practice in 1992.
That is why you started spine surgery, because of your mentor, or there was another reason why you choose?
Yeah, honestly, I got exposed to spine surgery, and specifically scoliosis and spine deformity surgery, as a medical student at Northwestern University, rotating at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital in Chicago in the late 1980s. There was a very famous scoliosis surgeon, Ronald DeWald, who actually trained Keith Bridwell. So I'm kind of like the grandchild. So Ron DeWald was the grandfather. The father was Keith Bridwell, and then I was the child, Larry Lenke, again, who trained underneath both of them. But Ronald DeWald, I spent just a month with him on his service. I happened to be put on his service as a rotating medical student when I was at Northwestern Medical School in Chicago, and I was fascinated by what he was doing in scoliosis surgery in the late 1980s. And honestly, my goal initially was to be a heart surgeon, a cardiothoracic surgeon, but for various reasons, I got intrigued by orthopedic surgery. Then when I rotated with Dr. DeWald, I realized I could be an orthopedic surgeon and do these tremendous, operations on patients for their scoliosis problems. And that's kind of all came together. And that's why I wanted to become a spine surgeon, and specifically more of a scoliosis and spine deformity surgeon.
Well, that's very impressive that you decided that early on, what you liked and sticked with it. So this is very rare.
Right.
Why did you choose this field?
Again, I really wanted the challenge of a very kind of hardcore surgical specialty. And back, in the 70s and 80s, really cardiothoracic surgery was known as kind of the kind of intense, hardcore surgical specialty. But again, there was something about orthopedic surgery that attracted me. I think the variety was there. And also then when I went through again orthopedic surgery training and exclusively and when and spine surgery specifically, I realized that really attracted me, I think, to be a both complex surgical discipline, but with really fantastic outcomes. I mean, heart surgery patients do well, but patients are older and they're more, and there's lots of complications, even in the best of surgeries, and even when obviously things have to be done. I mean, it's not, I think, the outcomes weren't as reliable as scoliosis surgery, especially in children and young adults. I mean, obviously in older adults, it still can be very challenging, and it's challenging in all ages, but I just felt the overall outcomes were more positive and much more definitive early on. I mean, you really, with after a few days in the hospital, patients are getting back to activities and really see the difference immediately, and I think the positive outcomes were just much more, I think, persuasive to me to kind of spend my time and energy in that specialty rather than cardiothoracic surgery. And I'm glad I made that decision, because cardiothoracic surgery has changed dramatically the last several decades with less invasive approaches and almost really more with cardiologists, interventional cardiologists doing more of the quote surgery, right? I mean, so I think in retrospect, I made the right decision.
Yeah.
Good.
And we thank you for that, doing that decision, since you inspired a lot of us.
Thanks.
So if you think about your professional journey, who inspired you the most to become the surgeon you are now, and why?
Yeah, I would have to say Keith Bridwell. Obviously, he was my first true mentor, although I got interested in scoliosis surgery by Ron DeWald. I mean, it was really Keith Bridwell, because I trained with him. I was a resident with him for 5 years at Washington University. I was his first fellow. So, he actually came to me in my chief resident year of residency and asked me to be his first fellow. And a quick little story, there was a little bit of controversy about that, because when I initially approached Dr. Bridwell and told him I wanted to become a spine surgeon and I wanted to do a spine surgery fellowship, he immediately told me I needed to train with Dr. DeWald, because obviously that was his mentor and trainee. So I actually interviewed and accepted a position as Dr. DeWald's fellow. So then about 6 months later, Dr. Bridwell decided to start a fellowship and wanted me to be his first fellow, because he knew me very well, because I had been with him for 5 years in St. Louis. But I told Dr. Bridwell, well, that I've already accepted to be Dr. DeWald's fellow. This is going to get me in trouble, because I really I wouldn't mind staying in St. Louis, because my wife actually I had just gotten her master's degree in hospital administration, and so she has accepted a fellowship in St. Louis to be at Washington University for the year that I was a fellow. So we were planning to live apart our first year of marriage. We just got married. So it was obviously better for me from my family perspective to stay in St. Louis and do a fellowship, but I had already agreed to be Dr. DeWald's fellow. So I asked Dr. Bridwell to get Dr. DeWald on the phone. We had to talk about this, because I didn't want to get in trouble with Dr. DeWald. But bottom line is, luckily we had done this early enough where Dr. DeWald had another fellow that he could take, and so I could stay in St. Louis, be Dr. Bridwell's fellow, and all worked out fine. But it was a little bit hectic for a few days and to sort this all out.
That sounds challenging.
But the bottom line also, since I spent 5 years, as a resident with Dr. Bridwell, then it was his first fellow, then I stayed on with him. He was, we were co-attendings together for 24 years. So obviously I really owe a lot to him and his foundation that he, gave me in spine surgery and especially in spine deformity surgery. But I also mentioned that one beneficial thing that I did in my career, and I mentioned this to all young surgeons that start out their practice, because I had done so much training in St. Louis and I only really had one mentor, I wanted to kind of get exposed to other ways of doing things. So I arranged the first 2 years of my practice in St. Louis that I spent 6 months traveling around the world, seeing other surgeons do spine surgery. So basically, I would work for 2 months and I would travel for a month. And I visited 30 other surgeons around the world and got a really nice perspective on how things are done, sometimes even just slightly different, but it was really beneficial that at that time period to go travel and see other surgeons, not only doing surgery, but even how they evaluate patients, take care of them post-op. And I learned a lot, and it really, I think, kind of put a lot of different perspectives in my head on how I wanted to be myself as a surgeon. Because no surgeon is exactly like any other surgeon. I have a lot of Keith Bidwell in me, but I have some Ron DeWald in me. I visited him again. I have a lot of surgeons like Jürgen Harms, John Dubuisset, John Kostovic, other really giants in the field. Robert Winter. David Bradford. These are really, very senior surgeons I visited who gave me a lot of direct and indirect education that I kept with me and to kind of form my surgical kind of montage of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to practice as a surgeon. So I think that's very important for young surgeons to do that, no matter where you train, to spend time, visiting other surgeons early in your practice when you're still influential. You still can influence yourself to kind of take in new ideas and techniques to make yourself a better surgeon.
And did you get the impression that surgical intervention is just the last thing you do, and there is a million of things that surgeon should know before, not only in technically, but how you deal with the patient in the outpatient clinic, in the ward? I found it always really interesting.
Yeah, bottom line, we're physicians first and surgeons second. So yeah, you have to be a good physician first. That means being able to talk to patients, make sure they understand their condition, make sure that they understand the options of treatment. Obviously, I've got after 33 years in practice now, I got a pretty boutique practice where patients come to me and they're all screened, and so they all kind of need my help as a surgeon. So I don't have to spend a lot of time with non-operative care. But obviously, you do have to do that when you're starting out your practice, and most surgeons, even their entire practice, will have to give patients non-operative options to basically fulfill before you consider surgery, right? And you have to be good at explaining that and giving them the empathy they need and the education they need to make the right decision for themselves. I mean, that's what I always tell patients. My job is to educate, and your job is to make a decision how you want to be treated, right? And that's whether you want or need non-operative treatment or obviously surgical treatment.
So as you told us, like, your career worked out perfectly, like it looks like a perfect plan. It might have not always looked like the perfect plan to you at the time. If you could turn back time, what's like the advice you'd give the younger yourself, like the young fellow or resident?
Yeah, well, again, as I mentioned earlier, definitely seeing other ways of doing things younger is very important. I think for me, staying academically inclined was very helpful, because I initially kind of did research just to, I think, understand how best to treat my patients, and realizing that if I reviewed my results to make myself better, and then publish that would force me to become the best surgeon I could be. But I didn't realize the exponential impact that had on other surgeons as well. I mean, that if the research I was doing, I quickly realized other surgeons were reviewing, and not obviously you have to be skeptical, and not everything obviously is taken as gospel and changes everything. But certainly, the more you become versed in reading the literature, understanding literature, providing literature to others, the better surgeon you become at the ways that you can help other surgeons become better too. And I didn't really understand the impact that would have until I've been in practice for a while and done a fair amount of research. But it's very important, I think, if you are able to integrate academics and research into your clinical practice, that you ultimately end up a better surgeon yourself, but you'll really impact and have a better I think persuasive attitude towards other surgeons as well, who will respect you and also learn from you and then help their patients as well. So it's really kind of neat how you can really help a lot of patients and help your profession, not only your practice. In other words, if you become academically inclined. So that's one thing I didn't really understand that at all when I started my practice, but within 10 or 15 years, and especially after publication of the classification system that is still widely used, that totally changed my career, obviously, and then in a very positive way.
Thank you.
Thinking about research, where do you see the most promising fields of research within spine surgery?
Yeah, I think right now, obviously, we're in a cusp of a new era of research where machine learning and artificial intelligence will really start to help us understand things much quicker, provide pathways of diagnosis, pathways of treatment and specific treatment that will produce better outcomes. And it's going to be another 3 to 5 years before that becomes kind of useful on a day-to-day basis, and maybe 10 years before it's optimized. But that's going to truly revolutionize spine surgery and certainly spine deformity surgery, where it's really complex. We have very complex conditions, very complex patients, complex treatment options, and right now it's still a bit the decision process is still pretty much left up to the surgeon how best to treat their patients, and most surgeons have a pretty good feel for that, but it's not a perfect science yet. We need but when we get big data behind this, I think it's really going to provide surgeons with not only who best to offer treatment to, but then also what is the best treatment in their hands to provide to the patient, because it may be different. It may, for the same condition, if I'm seeing a patient who has the same condition someone else is seeing, a different treatment may be better for that patient, because that's what the surgeon does better. I can't treat everyone. But obviously, assuming all surgeons want to do the best job for the patients, which we would assume they do. I mean, it may be a different approach, because they may be different on different technical skills that I have that may produce a similar outcome with a different approach, and that's what we need to understand. Because at the end of the day, the key is to get the best outcome with the least complication rate for the treatments for the patients being treated.
So you were talking about tools that might suggest treatment options that are not individually based by the surgeon, but more on different opinions, which is obviously already still far away from daily practice. Do you see any other technology? I know robots, augmented reality, they're very common now, but still do not fulfill all the tasks we might hope for more accuracy. Is there a field you think that might evolve over time?
Yeah, I think these we call these enabling technologies are all here. I mean, we have robots in our hospital now. We have navigation in our hospital, and we're slowly starting to tie all this into intraoperative techniques, confirming optimal surgeries, whether it's alignment or nerve decompression. And but we're not there yet. I mean, we're using these enabling technologies, but we're using them really as assist devices, not as confirmation devices. We perform the optimal surgery, but very soon we're going to tie in the pre-op, all the pre-op assessments and data into the intra-op execution to confirm optimal surgical procedures that will hopefully produce, you would think, better outcomes, right? I mean, that's a logical kind of loop pattern that is continually being optimized, right? So we have that now in bits and pieces, but we don't have the continuous loop yet. When we'll have that, I'd say pretty soon, in the next year or two. I mean, it's coming very soon, and then also that continuous feedback loop of what's either gone right or what's gone wrong is continually being analyzed to kind of throw out the things that go wrong and have less of those and have more things that go right, right? So in all aspects, whether it's radiographic assessment, pre-op planning, intra-op execution, post-operative care. So all this data has to be entered right into one platform that continually analyzes it to produce a better kind of constant feedback loop of surgeon, of patient traversing this kind of overall lineage of care, right? The hierarchy of care that occurs from being seen for a problem all the way to kind of being post-operatively off surgery, right? There's a continuum of care that all this data has to be constantly analyzed and constantly get input and then output to the provider, whether it's a surgeon or not a provider, in various time frames of assessments to understand, how best to treat a patient. So we're getting there, but it's gonna, and again, obviously, big data and AI is gonna help us get there faster.
So if we look at you in the OR today, are you still doing everything freehand, open? You're probably so fast freehand that the robot is just like a delay for you.
Yeah, honestly, it is. And I asked my fellows that. So, we have all approaches are done at my hospital. Our fellows get exposed to all approaches, freehand, fluoroscopic assisted screw placement and navigation, stealth navigation, robotics. So they have, which is great, because that's why our fellowship is so popular, because you do get exposed to everything, which is very important. You don't want to just get exposed to one thing in a training program. But I asked the fellows, should I start using robotics, navigation, everything, and they still tell me universally that it's just going to slow me down. And
Yeah.
it's not going to be as accurate.
Mhm.
But again, I've got a very special practice. I've been doing this for a long time. I had to learn how to do this without these enabling technologies. There was no navigation or robotics when I started doing complex deformity surgery with freehand techniques back in the mid 1990s. We had to learn this basically by cadaver labs and carefully and slowly in patients. But I'm to the point now where I am probably still faster and more accurate than any kind of assist technology, but it's only because I've had experience. That's and that's. But again, as I've always said in my entire career, surgeons should use the techniques that are safest and most efficient in their hands, and then that may change over time. I mean, I certainly at some point, if robotics gets so much more advanced that it's faster and more efficient and safer than what I do, guess what? I'm using robotics. I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
We're not there yet, but you know what? We're hopefully we should get there before the end of my career. That's my goal, and I'm looking forward to that day.
Thank you.
So, talking about research and new technologies, are there any trends in spine surgery that you might think just be getting out of fashion or will stay necessary for a lot of more years?
Well, I think there's two specific areas I'll comment on. One is the use of a tethering for scoliosis surgery. As you're aware, there's a lot of interest in tethering not only for children to kind of modulate curves over time with growth, but also potentially, especially in the lumbar spine, to keep the spine moving following deformity correction and not immobilizing it like we do with fusions, right? So intuitively, the holy grail is to correct the deformity but still keep the spine mobile. Up till now, we've had difficulty doing that because the spine is a complex structure, and there's so much force with movement that anything that we put in the spine, when trying to keep it moving, tends to either break, loosen, or if it doesn't break or loosen, the spine kind of fuses, right? So that's the big question with tethering, especially in the lumbar spine. Is it ever going to get to a point where we can keep the spine moving with still deformity correction? And up till now, if you put kind of one tether in the lumbar spine, it often breaks. So now the plan is to put two tethers in to make it more strong and stiff. But then will that over stiffen the spine and lead to fusion?
Yes.
And that's the question. So I think the debate is still ongoing with that. But I'm not doing tethering. I'm still waiting for the research to come out to see exactly where the sweet spot is. But if we can find a point of tethering some lumbar spines and controlling the deformity, but keeping some motion, I think that's going to be really a beneficial thing for patients, and I'll start doing it. But right now, the jury's still out on that. The second thing I'll talk about in spine surgery that I don't have a lot of knowledge on, but I certainly keep my interest in is endoscopic surgery, doing really small, very small incisions, endoscopes to try and not only do decompressions of nerves that are pinched with disc herniations or spinal stenosis, but also doing fusions now that they're doing fusions and other, more advanced procedures. That's a really fascinating field. The Asians really started this. It's been around in Asia for 2 decades now. It's only coming to the United States in the last, and in Europe, I think in the last several years, but that's a really rapidly evolving area that has a lot of exciting promise, and with adding another kind of form of minimally invasive surgery to those to spine surgeons with endoscopic techniques. So that's really, I think, optimistic that that's going to, I think, really take off in 10 years from now, maybe a mainstay of treatment for many, especially degenerative conditions, maybe not deformity conditions, but degenerative conditions.
So if we come back to your career, obviously most know your name because of your classification, but is this the achievement you are most proud of, or is there maybe something else?
The singular most thing I'm proud of is the patients I've been able to take care of. I saw a patient today as a distinct reminder. I just finished reading the letter that the patient gave me during my visit. She's 9 weeks post-op, had a very complicated 12-hour revision surgery to correct a severe kind of flat back posture and sagittal malalignment and coronal malalignment. And so we did a very complex osteotomy surgery on her and total spine reconstruction about 10 weeks ago. And she's doing really, really well after a very, very major surgery. But she wrote me the most heartfelt letter of thanks, a 2-page letter thanking me for, the care I provided her, the surgical care. And honestly, that's the most thing I'm proud of, to be able to help patients like her. And I've been fortunate to help thousands of patients like her in my career. But that's the thing I'm definitely most proud of, is the individual patients I've treated. The second thing I'm most proud of, honestly, are the 135 fellows that I've trained. So my 32-year career now, I've trained 135 fellows. It's a lot. Maybe other surgeons have trained more, but that's certainly up there, at least in the United States. And to be able to have those surgeons go out and kind of replicate what the skills that I've provided them and help their patients. So I really now have 135 other patients every day I'm helping as well, right? Because I've imparted some knowledge and expertise and technical skills to those surgeons, and they now are helping their patients in a similar way that I help my patients. So I'm really, really gratified and really, I think, honored to be able to do that as well. So that's something I'm secondary proud of. And then the third thing would be the research. Honestly, that's number 3, because honestly, the direct, I think, patient care, I think, is why I went into surgery, why I become a surgeon. And now only in the last kind of 10 to 20 years have I realized the impact that the research has. And it's been very important. And it may be overall, from a professional perspective, the most important part of my career. But honestly, what makes me give me the most gratitude is when I go home and reflect upon the day I had, is the patients that I've treated and I've helped, and then again the patients that my fellows have treated, and there's a lot of them now. So that really gives me a lot of gratitude and satisfaction that I've lived a career worthwhile, in other words. So, and I've got obviously hopefully a few more years left. So I'm still looking forward to it as well.
That's a really nice perspective. Yeah.
Probably why we all begin with medicine, is with
Yeah.
try to help other people,
Exactly.
and our patient first. And
right.
Then,
all these other things come about.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
From that.
To end our conversation, let's engage in a quick game in which we ask you a question and you reply with a quick and fast answer.
Sure.
What is your hobby?
I love exercising and skiing, snow skiing. I really like snow skiing.
Yeah. And what is your favorite book?
My favorite book, that's a good question. I don't really have a favorite. First of all, I don't do a lot of pleasure reading, in honesty, because I do so much writing and editing that my children call me a loser because of that. But honestly, if I had to pick one, I'm a big Harry Potter fan, really because of my son. And so I've read most of the Harry Potter books, and I just kind of find that fascinating and entertaining, basically. So I'd say Harry Potter.
Okay. And your favorite bagel order?
Oh, that's easy. Cinnamon raisin with strawberry cream cheese.
Oh my God. And your favorite surgery? That's easy.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite has to be a very complex reconstruction with a vertebral column resection, but only if it goes very well. That's a very complicated surgery. But that's kind of what I'm known for, and again, that there's nothing better than because that's so dramatic a surgery for patients. But it's a challenging surgery, and I've had a few in the last couple of years that that haven't gone well, and really I think it humbles you and really makes you realize that we have to keep doing our best and we have to do better. I mean, that's another reason why I would choose that surgery, because we don't have that surgery perfected yet. We have to do better. So not only myself, but other surgeons who do that as well. So
there is a word that defines spine surgery.
I would say compulsion. Compulsion.
Okay.
That's the first time we hear that. We often hear challenge or
emotion.
Yeah, challenge would be maybe my second word, but compulsion. I think you have to be compulsive in all aspects of preoperative analysis, intraoperative execution, and postoperative care. You have to be very compulsive.
This is very, very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Lenke, and for being a source of inspiration for young surgeons at the AO Spine Club. And it has been a true privilege. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my honor. I'm glad to help in any way possible.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.